The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Before we jump in today, you will receive a copy of the presentation slides, and this webinar is being recorded and will be available on telemetry.com after today. Please note on your attendee panel box, there is a box where you can ask any questions as they come to you, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. My name is Carrie Fuqua, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Telemetry. And I'd love to take a minute to introduce our speakers today, Cameron Laker and Peter Clare. Cameron co-founded Mindfield in 2005, and since then has developed recruitment solutions and strategies for more than 100 hourly employers. Cameron leads the company strategy and drives innovation around how Mindfield uses technology and innovation tactics for engaging the candidate market. He has a diploma in integrated management studies from BCIT and is a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization. Peter Clare is the SVP and General Manager at Telemetry and has over 12 years of account, product, and technology startup experience in the human capital management industry. In addition to having vast experience in product management services, account management, Peter was also the VP of Sales at Jobster.com, a company who helped pioneer the idea of talent generation software. Peter was also the founder at Digiband, a service for independent musicians. In today's webinar, Cameron and Peter will discuss recruitment marketing best practices for high volume hiring, including how to invest in your talent database, how to make your career site the hub for recruitment, how you can focus on the funnel, the importance of conversion, and getting the most out of what you put into your recruitment marketing strategies. So with that, I'd love to hand it over to Peter and Cameron.
Super, thank you very much, Carrie. So this is Peter Clare speaking. Cam, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to try and stay as much out of your way here and let you do all the talking in the process. But I think, on the previous slide, there was part of our tagline there that modern recruitment is modern marketing. And I think, what we want to share today and provide for all the attendees is a real understanding of the huge competitive advantage that we've seen for our customers that are embracing modern marketing techniques into their recruitment practices. We've seen a seismic shift in the expectations that candidates have from their interactions with companies based on what they experience at Amazon and on other consumer sites. And we see this being true across all the industries that we work with, across all the different types and levels of hires, that the expectations are rapidly changing. So when you start talking about high volume and hourly positions, which is Cam's definite expertise, it gets even harder. So operating at that level of scale does require the right mix of consistency, automation, relentless focus on optimizing on an ongoing basis. So today we're going to talk about those 5 key shifts, and we're going to really leverage Cam's experience in each of these to get an understanding of how he's been able to build a sustainable competitive advantage for Mindfield in the hourly hiring space in Canada. So number 1, invest in your own talent base. So again, in the consumer and B2B marketing world, there's literally nothing more important than building your database. At Telemetry, we really focus on large organizations over 5,000 FTEs, and we have them all mapped into a database with deep profiles on all of them, and we understand exactly where they're at in their recruitment marketing processes, et cetera, from all the available information. We think we think that provides a real advantage for us in sustaining a competitive advantage at getting in front of our customers, i.e. in the recruiting world, your candidates, and making sure they understand the value that we can drive for them. So with that context of how important talent databases are, I'm going to maybe shift over and ask you a couple questions, Cam. So sure. Number 1, can you speak to the importance of investing in your own database at Mindfield and how Mindfield has benefited from doing that over time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's kind of two parts to it, and I'll take a kind of a bit of a step back on just how we got to this strategy today. When I started the business in 2005, the recruiting landscape looked very, very different. Job boards and tools, and even ATSs have, at that point, had nowhere near the functionality they even have today. But as we started to evolve, and over the past 12 years, we not only see cycles of what happens with the right advertising tools, practices, but beyond that, there's tremendous change that has to happen. So when we look at our database, we've taken two approaches. Number one is, what are all the key sources that we can go subscribe to? And I'm talking specifically to the resume databases. How can we go and invest into really rich data sources? And secondly, not just having resumes on file, but actually really taking that resume and then taking them through what would be considered a bit of a traditional lead qualification process, so to speak. So there's two aspects that we look at the investment of our database. One, how do we get better, higher quality, and more data into our database? And then secondly, what are the steps we need to go through to engage that database? And to me, one without the other is kind of a waste. It's really about how do we invest the time and energy to take a bunch of names on a list to really start to build some engagement and some connection and a bit of a relationship in a very high volume fashion.
Super. And as you've gone out and built that database, have you found specific tools or specific areas to be more valuable than others as you've done that? I'm thinking in terms of resume databases versus past applicants and things like that.
Yeah, great question. So when we look at it, I guess when we look at the data sources, right? So I'm going to try to put this into as much of a marketing context as I can. But when you think about data sources, past applicants or recent past applicants, which we'll talk to here shortly, is absolutely one of the richest pools that you could possibly have. And what we've found as we've evolved our business is typical ATS platforms really don't allow you to manage a funnel the same way a recruitment marketing platform would. So we see two aspects to this: is how do we get new sources of candidates into the system, and then secondly, how are we maximizing this fresh, very relevant, recent candidates that are applying to jobs? How do we not only try to find them a job quickly once they're applying, or repurpose them, but if we can't repurpose them, then really investing in the time and effort to go and communicate and take them along a bit of a candidate journey.
And that candidate journey is almost just a precursor to actually having a position open for them in this context, Cam.
Yeah, you got it. And I'm speaking in the sense as an RPO firm, but really the strategy is the exact same in a corporate environment. When you think about marketing and you think about sales and marketing, where I've spent most of my time trying to learn this stuff has typically not necessarily been HR conferences or recruiting conferences or events. It's really looking to what marketing's doing. So when you think about a traditional marketing process, you're going to start with a whole bunch of suspects. You're going to get a massive list of names. And from that list of names, you need to start to qualify and really determine, of that list, who's your ideal customer. It's the exact same concept when it comes to recruiting. So when we start to look at the funnel and we look at the process, it's really a suspect to prospect to qualified lead idea. And then once you engage that person, you're really either nurturing them or trying to go and get them into a job immediately.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks, Cam, for that. When you think about engaging with candidates in advance of actually having a position for them, what kind of content do you think is important? What kind of interaction do you if you really break it down when you talk about that, pre-application interaction, how are you driving that? What kind of content's behind it? How are you doing that at scale?
Yeah, and to be completely honest, Peter, we're still trying to figure out what the right mix is, and we're measuring open rates and engagement rates, and we're trying to have landing pages they can go to so we can see which content is most relevant. I think at the end of the day, when I think about the hourly job seeker, especially an active one, they want a job pretty quickly, and we know these candidates are typically, if they're any good, they're on the market and off the market in 48 to 72 hours, because they can sit on their couch at home while watching Netflix and apply to 100 jobs from an Indeed app in literally 10 minutes. So when you think about the pace that you have to move there, if we think about the content, the first and foremost is, are you looking for a job, and are you looking for work in this area, and can we help you? Whether that's a past applicant or just a resume that we've been able to go and source. So it starts with the really simple qualification is, are you looking for work? And if you are looking for work, let's learn a little bit more about you. And the way we do it at scale is really leveraging the live processes that we've got in place. Now, if a candidate comes back and says, I'm not looking for work, but I might in the future, fantastic. What we'll do is we'll drop them into almost a nurturing folder or a nurturing campaign where we'll send them updates on, hey, here's some jobs that are close by. Send them content or recommendations on, resume improvements. What's best practice when you go and interview or your first interview? We forget sometimes that, especially in the volume game, a lot of these job seekers aren't necessarily really polished. So where in a corporate environment, you would never send here's the interview tips to a senior level candidate. But when you think about this front line, you can build amazing brand loyalty and connection by giving them help on helping them either work at your company or in general some generic tips. So we're looking at things like how to put together a great resume, what to remember when you get your interview. We don't hit them exclusively with job, and I think that's the biggest thing that we learned was you can't just every single morning blast an email out to all the jobs in your neighborhood. You actually have to take a bit of a longer term approach, because that candidate that you got might be a great fit in 6 months, and you've already spent the time and energy and money in the system. It's far more cost effective to find a way for that candidate to get them into the recruiting process for the appropriate job.
That's super helpful. So basically it's get everybody in the pool, right? And then try and make sure that you're absolutely front and center if they need a job today. And then on an ongoing basis, keep hitting them with value added information. I think the data that we have supports that, some of the things you're seeing on screen here. If you really think about it, so if you have a database of 500,000 hourly workers across a national organization, and if you can get 17% of them to click on an email that you send them on a routine basis, that's 85,000 people, right? If my math's correct. So we definitely see customers being able to significantly reduce their external advertising spend by leveraging these techniques that you're sharing here today, Cam. And the thing that I love the most about what you said is you're still constantly testing it, which is the hallmark of modern marketing, is consistently A/B testing and looking for that next piece of advantage. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, so one thing I'll add, Peter, is when you think about content creation, when it comes to talent acquisition, most organizations aren't set up with these kind of dedicated content people, and I think that the challenge that some companies have, it's very daunting because it's a slightly different skill set. But the content doesn't have to be groundbreaking stuff. It's really about touches, and it's about positive touches. And maybe it's a drop in a video from your head of HR, or a video from the store manager. I mean, you can film these things on your iPhone now and upload them, and that level of quality not only is good enough, but there are some really cost-effective ways. I've seen some companies been tremendously successful with creating blog content. Every couple weeks, just write a quick short snippet on what's going on, or highlight an employee. This is the kind of content that will be really, really critical to intertwine with the, hey, I got a job for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good sort of segue into shift number 2 here, which is making your career site the hub for recruitment. I think if you're going to have that content, really important to get it in front of your database, but also really important to put it out there as a lure on your career site hub. At the end of the day, all roads lead to the website. When we look at our stats, it shows that over half of the visitors coming to your site are going to be on a mobile device, so it needs to be completely mobile friendly. And fairly intuitively, just like in the consumer world, candidates are going to check out your website. So having more content for them there is better. So I think from a website perspective, Cam, I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on what the most important aspects of the website are. Talk a little bit maybe about employer branding in the process as well.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of the microsite strategy. I think it's critical that you've got one massive site, but if you're a large organization with a couple thousand jobs, you better have a really, really great way to allow that candidate to filter down to see what jobs are appropriate to them. So when I think about employment branding, I think that the mistake that I see sometimes that hourly employers make is they lean on their corporate messaging for corporate head office jobs the same way they use the same messaging for frontline staff. And this is where microsites within the main site or pages within the site really need to speak to your ideal candidate. The corporate employment value proposition is absolutely going to be different than the store level hourly job seeker. And quite frankly, they care about different things. So when I think about employment branding, I struggle to think that it's one big slogan or a couple of key messages. I think you need to really think about how do you tailor your messaging to certain groups, and even go as far as even certain role types. And I think we do this in our job descriptions today. And I say everybody does that. But when I think about the overall components of a career site, I think you have to have a really, really simple, straightforward way for that individual to find the content that's appropriate to them. This comes in the case of faceted search or being able to filter down results. When I look at the messaging, I believe, especially for volume, the visuals and being a highly visual, these candidates don't want to go read an entire page of the reasons to go and work there. The other piece that we're seeing is when we made the shift to put in kind of modern, let's call it candidate capture apply process technology, we went from approximately about a 35% from when they click apply to when they completed their application. We're now seeing numbers in the mid 80s. So you think about going back to the previous slide is around how do you build your database? Well, the first thing you need to do is make sure you're completely optimized to capture the candidate in the simplest way possible. What we're finding as well is, the stat here is 50% of career site visitors are from mobile. We're seeing some customers that are even beyond that. And we know especially if we're talking about the millennial generation for some of these hourly jobs, they are not going to spend 7 minutes applying to your job. So, we've even contemplated strategies on how do you get the quick capture and then go ask for more information later on in the process. So when I think about the components that are necessary to be there, I think you have to think about the segment that you're targeting, messages that's going to resonate, a really simple way for them to get to their content quickly that's relevant to them through great filtering and faceted search bars. And then finally, it has to be so simple to apply, and it's got to be lightning fast. Those are the components that I think are really moving the needle for our customers. And when I look at the market, I still see the download the PDF to apply here. Like, I just cringe when I think about that. Or the applicant tracking system technology that's got a bunch of non-mobile responsive fields, and you're scrolling and doing the pinch and pull. You've lost that candidate the second they hit that interface on their phone. And we've got data to 100% back that up.
Yeah, I'd have to go to my parents' house to get a fax machine, I think. So in terms of thinking about the audiences, Cam, I'd be curious about your thoughts. I think it's obvious that in different hourly hiring environments, you think about segmenting store managers versus, the tellers, etc. But what is your opinion, or what have you seen out there working effectively with regards to really doing a good job of targeting alumni, particularly in seasonal hiring environments, right? Segmenting out people that have worked there before versus newbies, and any thoughts on that as a general thing to be aware of with your website and with how you segment?
Yeah, really, really great question. Our approach on alumni or a lot of the time references boomerang hires, right, for these seasonal type scenarios. I think that as you look at, I think that if you've got a component of your site, like if a big part of what you want to do is to rehire people that you hired in the past, the best approach is to make sure that you've got them in a list that you can market to and send message to in advance, and have some way to have spend the time with the managers to actually rate the quality so you know who you want to bring back. But what I have seen is, when you think about when you go to a website or you go to a corporate website, I'm not even talking career site now, you will have very clear navigation recommendations for either a specific industry or a customer type or a business size. And when I think about if you're doing a lot of seasonal hiring and you're wanting to hire people back as alumni, that's a story that has to feel a little bit different than the job seeker who's just first time applying to you. So I think when you think about your ideal candidates and the sources and the strategy that you've got, what I believe works best is to be up front. When you hit the homepage of that career site, it's like, I'm looking to work again for your organization, and you may want to create some alternative workflows. We start to get into some complexities there, but that's a really good example of just being overt and having content that's overt to the candidates you're trying to speak to, versus this very vanilla, bland, generic statement that we see most of the time that tries to talk to everyone. And my lessons over the past 10 years is that if you're talking to everyone, you're not talking to anyone. So how do you get really specific with those messages? And then again, leaning on best practices when it comes to your career set on how you get them in the system quickly, and let your recruiters or managers do the work from there.
Yeah, super. And if we can go to the next one here on our shifts, is focusing on the funnel, right? So I just look at, you guys are hiring 13,000 candidates per year, right? And we've talked a lot about segmenting your pipelines, proactively moving them through a process, really focusing on conversion, which is going to come up next. What I'd really like to understand from your perspective, Cam, is how you approach the funnel at Mindfield, and what you've seen work best to attract and hire the right kind of talent for your customers. Traditionally we see companies really focus on the funnel after somebody has applied for a job. So I'd really be interested in terms of Mindfield's perspective on the whole process. Yeah,
we've tried so hard to invent some brand new way to do this, and at the end of the day, this is a really straightforward strategy that lends itself to how marketing and sales works together in your business. So, one of the things that we did really early on in our company is we have a completely separate talent marketing team, and their only job is to get candidates into the funnel. And to a certain extent, we don't actually necessarily even care about the quality. We care about the quality, but it's really about how do we get that funnel as full as we possibly can. And in the world of recruiting, and if you're a recruiter, you very rarely have time to go build your pipeline. You're basically working on open recs, and you've got a hiring manager breathing down your neck. So you're always focused on the tactical. So one of the things that we did in the funnel is, the very first thing we did was we actually created different accountabilities so that people could focus on the key steps of this funnel process. So we've got a team that's just responsible for how do we get more candidates into the funnel, not only for jobs, but into talent networks. And then it's really about a qualification process. So, every company has this unique fit DNA. Call it culture fit, call it whatever you like. And sometimes you can identify that with keywords. Sometimes you have to identify that by meeting the person, meeting them in person or through a phone interview. But as we look at the process and we think about it, we drive a whole bunch of people into the funnel. Okay, so 75% of them aren't a fit. Drop them into folders or drop them into areas where they might potentially be a fit. Then move to the next level. And what we try to do is really lean on the technology, the same way a CRM system supports sales and marketing, to lean on the tech, to really focus in on, of all of these suspects that have come in through the top of the funnel, which 10 to 15% really are worthwhile looking at. And we use a mix of keyword searches and filters. We've got some proprietary data that we know around, the right proximity. How far is a candidate going to travel to a point where they start to become a major turnover risk? And so by the time these candidates get to the recruiters, they've been vetted pretty heavily based on the filters and kind of the gates that we've created. And we've got a macro way to do that for generic talent, but we've also got a specific way to do that for each individual customer. So this is ongoing work in progress for us, because when you think about volume and you think about volume hiring, if you don't have a streamlined tech-enabled process, you're basically pushing, and it's going to be fully on the stores to go make these hires. So what we try to do is, how can the technology do a better job of identifying the likelihood of a candidate being right fit, so that by the time they get down to farther down in the process, our recruiters are working with a fairly predictable, high quality pool of people that are recent, that have put their hand up either through an invite to apply or that they've recently applied, so that we can be really effective. So I always look at this the exact same way I do a sales and marketing funnel. And I think the challenge that companies have is you've got one person with the accountability to go build the funnel and also manage their pipeline and also manage recs and we've found the only way to do this effectively is actually separate the accountabilities with two different departments, so to speak.
And yeah, and I think an important point for the folks on the phone to understand is, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this doesn't mean you doubled your workforce. This means that you applied a level of focus that allowed the recruiter, for example, to handle more recs because they don't have to do the other jobs. And this repurposing actually leads to a higher level of efficiency versus a situation where, look, you got to triple your team size to have different people focusing in different areas.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same concept of, would you let the sales rep in a certain territory do all of the marketing themselves for that territory?
Well, I know that they'd like to.
I'm sure they would. They're horrible at it,
yeah.
Right? Horrible at it because it's a completely different skill set.
Sure.
This is a tough band-aid to rip off for companies, because you start looking at how you're set up, and there isn't a company in North America that I've spoken to in the last 2 years that their number one problem is not, I need qualified, good quality candidates in a reasonable period of time. So it's all about sourcing right now with the current labor market and unemployment rates. So it's quality first and then a reasonable time frame so I can run my business properly. But it's a completely different skill set. And when we start talking about modern marketing, that is becoming a skill set, and it has been a skill set for a long time. That is a marketer's mindset. And what I've seen, companies that try to turn recruiters into marketers typically fail. The systems are different. I mean, good luck getting a sales rep to even update your CRM system effectively. Never mind having them go run a marketing automation campaign. So I see it similar. I think recruiters have more shared skills than maybe a sales compared to a marketing role, but it's a different mentality. It's different thinking. It's systems based versus I need to get this rec filled, or I need to close this next deal as an analogy.
Yeah, we're working with a lot of customers right now as they're taking on that transition and helping them understand what are the key skills and evolving the organization through that process for sure. So I definitely understand what you're saying there. I think our favorite topic is the next one here, which is all about conversion. And I love it that you brought up conversion probably 7 times already under each of the other banners. Given that, you spend time and money on people, you've got to convert them to an outcome, right? In the process. So I'd love rather than to kind of beat away at the idea of conversion being so important, what I'd love to see is, your thoughts and your understanding from what you've seen from all of your customers and prospects around, how important they're understanding the conversion to outcomes versus just base employment branding, et cetera, at this stage.
Yeah, well, I think it's, you're going to go spend the money on, you're going to spend $1 on advertising. And if you're going to make that investment in advertising and then not have a really good way to capture those leads that are coming in, to me, it's wasting money. It is absolutely throwing money out the door. And, as I was mentioning before, a bad application process, you're going to capture 10, 15, maybe 20% of your clicks, whereas a great application process and converting them, to me, that needs to be the metric. If for the heads of talent acquisition on this call, if conversion is not a key KPI that you're talking about, you're probably missing on that. And the reason I say this is that people, we hear all the time, I don't have enough good candidates. You know what? You probably have enough hitting your website. You just can't convert enough of them to actually fill a funnel properly. So, we see this all the time. The number one way to deal with candidate sourcing is just make sure you're capturing a high percentage of the people that you're already driving to your site. It's crazy to me when I see companies that are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising, whether they're doing it themselves or with a third-party firm, and then try to drive a mobile job seeker to a career site that looks like it was built in 1999. To me, it's the biggest opportunity to go and make an impact on the quality and quantity of applicants is by focusing on that conversion rate.
Yeah, and I think the key point is it's just intuitive that the best candidates are going to be the first ones to drop out of a terrible process, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think some interesting stats on the screen here of the research that we've done and seen auditing, the Fortune 500 in great detail and seeing that, only 4% of them are actually leveraging best practices for a conversion process, and 60% failing grade, right? So, in a lot of those cases, they've got a great brand name that they can rely on, but great brand name is not going to move the needle the same way that tripling your throughput will. So it's a really important thing for people to be focused on. I'd love to flip to the last slide here in the process. So I think this is really about measurement, right? So measure everything to get the most out of what you're putting in. It's really important to look at what is the impact of shortening your apply process, taking out 4 questions, right, as an example, or increasing the frequency of your emails. So we talked earlier about a 17% conversion ratio. What if you send an email every 2 weeks instead of every 3 weeks? Does that go up or down? And really leveraging that kind of A/B testing and that always be measuring mindset can lead to a really, really, really solid competitive advantage. So, how many recs should you have filling a high volume role all at the same time? Really understanding that, measuring it, evaluating it, talking to other companies about it. This is really, really important. So Cam, I'd love to hear some of the things that you guys are measuring as your key performance indicators to fill roles as effectively as you can.
Yeah, the big lesson that we had was we first started with just how many applicants per job, and then we got, okay, of the applicants, how many are how many look quality or hireable, so to speak. We started there, and that's a base level kind of view at things. Although sometimes that data is really hard for some companies to get. As we've evolved our talent marketing practices, there's a couple of things. So conversion is absolutely top of mind. So we know if we are optimizing our conversion ratio, then we're getting the highest return possible on the advertising that we are spending. Open rates of emails and click-throughs of invites to apply. We've been studying this now for probably 18 months with detail. We can tell you right now in most geographies support how many emails that we need to send to drive the appropriate opens and click-throughs to build a funnel for a job. So when you start thinking about having control, this is a completely different approach than, you know, the good old post and pray, or even worse, crossing your fingers and hoping your store managers are going to figure this out themselves, because they can't. They don't have access to this kind of tech. So when we look at, you know, we've got the basic stuff and applicants per job, quality of applicants per job. We've got open rates. We'll test open rates. So we're always trying to test. So we'll run 2 different types of email templates to a similar size. Measure the open rates. We'll do it a couple times, drop the one that's poor performing, and then add a new one in to see if it can be better. So open rates, click-throughs are really key. Website visits is obviously a really important one, because the conversion that you're seeing, there's a couple different ways to look at conversion. There's a flat out visitor to your site. There's a visitor that, and then secondly, it's the visitor that gives you information. So we look at it as how many visitors are hitting the site and how many are clicking apply. That's one key gate. The second gate we're looking at then is, of the ones that click apply, how many actually complete the apply process. So we're looking at it in a couple different gates, and then looking at that data through that lens really gives you some confidence to make changes and try some different things to see if you can move the needle on how you're getting candidates into the funnel. But I mean, we probably overdo it, Peter, to be honest. Like like every company, we're data rich and sometimes insights poor. You got nothing but data. So it's about picking what are those 5 or 6 that you're going to hone in on that really actually make an impact on the recruiting process. And we started with 45 metrics, and now we're down to 6 or 7 really key ones that we know make a difference.
Super. That's really helpful, Cam. Thank you for that. So I've got a couple of questions that have come through the question panel here. So I'd love to just ask you some of those. So I think the first one here is, how often should the data on your career site be refreshed?
So data as in content, I'm assuming like job content.
Yeah,
well,
presumably the actual jobs themselves are getting refreshed every day, but beyond that, some of the other content that you talked about.
Yeah, one thing for sure is if you have a standing open job posting that just stays open for 365 days a year. I've seen, companies that have, here's a sales associate job for this location, here's a store manager job, here's a key holder job. If those are just sitting there stagnant, it actually does more harm than good. And the reason why I say this is Google's going to look at the site, and your site will start to get poorly ranked because there's no content that's changing. So the actual changing of the content on your site is absolutely critical to the overall SEO strategy when it comes to search engines. We look at it a couple different ways. The job content should always be fresh. So jobs are coming up and jobs are coming down when they're closed, and being really, really methodical about that. That content, Google loves that content, and it validates your site. When we look at the key content, we're not big fans of making big changes to employment branding statements for our customers. Once we get pretty clear on the value prop, we stick with those key headers and key statements. But where we do find value is these micro sites or event-based sites. The best way to do this, and this is something we do internally, the best content that we're using to actually get back to our site is based on Instagram. So we put in job descriptions, search this hashtag, don't take our word for it, search this hashtag that our employees use to kind of post content about their work experience, and that actually drives really great, it's fresh content on those platforms, but ultimately you drive them back to the website. So I wouldn't be screwing around too much with the major content pieces. Jobs have to be fresh and they have to be real. And then secondly, I would look to, you've got a new store opening or new location, or you want to pop up some new pages within your site. I'd be looking to do that in a similar fashion as how you would test, different email templates.
Great. So we talked earlier about segmenting into kind of different folks that focus on different areas of the funnels, and I have two questions related to that. So the first one is, over time, as you separated that, have you found any ebbs, any ebbs and flows within the business that have required you to really focus more effort on one or the other of those areas?
Yeah, really great question, and a huge learning opportunity we had on this. So one of the things that I believe is the right way to segment the database when it comes to hourly job seekers and frontline staff is geography. So what we started to do is we create basically folders or lists or mini funnels of really specific geographies. And we try not to go too broad, because if you go too broad with these geographies, you could have someone that needs to travel an hour for a job, and we know that's not going to happen. So almost micro geographies has been key. And then what we're doing from that is we're saying, okay, of the applicants or of the candidates we have access to in this segmented database, of all these micro geographies that we're setting up, which ones are low on talent and which ones are high. And what we're finding is that's driving the bulk of our advertising strategies for us and our customers, more so than driving advertising for actual open jobs. So what it enabled us to do is we didn't know where we were weak and where we were strong, where were your talent pools good. And so what we've done is we've segmented it down into micro geographies. So when a job comes in, you can quickly go to that geography. And obviously, full disclosure, we use the telemetry platform to do this. And we've got what's called auto search turned on, so that if there's ever a resume or a candidate that goes online that posts their information that we have access to, we actually use the auto search functionality to pull that candidate into that micro talent network and then have an automated email that goes out. So our team isn't even touching it. We're leaning on the technology to get that candidate into our folder, and then we're leaning on technology to send the initial, hey, can we help you find a job? We're early days on what I think is an absolutely critical strategy to going and building a defensible, repeatable candidate sourcing strategy where you become less concerned about the job boards and where you're spending money, is because that really becomes the gold on how you're going to fill jobs.
Super. Yeah, and I know you're driving a very sophisticated and mature process, actually, compared to a lot of the companies that we work with. So I think this question kind of speaks to that, which is if you don't already have all of the segmented resources, et cetera, is there any quick wins that you can leverage? Is there anything you can do that doesn't require getting everything segmented in the 5-year process that you guys have gone through to get there?
Well, you could give me a call and we can do it for you, I guess. Sorry, that was probably inappropriate, but I think that mapping it out. I mean, I'm guessing most people on this phone call have some level of applicant tracking system. I think the first thing you need to ask yourself is where are we good and where are we struggling? And if you first start with this concept of geographies first, role type second, and then you start to look at how do you go and start to create advertising strategies and an approach that proactively builds those pools. Even if you're just getting it in your Outlook, God forbid, but at least it focuses your time on the true weak parts of your business. So when I think about how to get started on this, I think getting really clear on who your candidates are that you're trying to get after, really clear on where you're weak, and then starting to move some of your source advertising strategies away from just the per job rec, rat race of, oh yeah, big surprise, you got no applicants again for that job that you've had posted for 6 months. Like nothing's going to change there. So what I would suggest is that if you really took a hard look at jobs in the database that you got and the regions that you're working in, is where is your time best suited, and I'd be doubling down on the effort and time and money that you're spending in these tougher markets.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you very much, Cam. So I think, and by the way, if you're using Outlook, then please call telemetry. So I think with that, Carrie, that covers what we wanted to. Cam, thank you so much for sharing all your insight and your time and your partnership over the last many, many years.
Yeah, my pleasure, Peter. I really enjoyed this, and I hope the people on the call got some value out of this. And if it feels daunting, it's harder than the way companies have done recruiting before. But we all have to evolve, and there are baby steps to be taken on how to get there.
Super. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everyone.